Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to another video. So it's about that time to be looking into Path of Exile again for the upcoming league. And here I want to share just my initial thoughts on maybe a potential build that I've theory crafted. All right, so let's take a look at my theory craft here. So obviously I didn't want to run it back with the same old. I tried to, try my hands here at making something new. And so the strengths of this build is that it's not Lightning Arrow Deadeye again. And the weakness is obviously that it's been untested. These are just some interactions I know about that might be cool and might make the build function pretty well in a mapping sense. I will say that the one thing I haven't really figured out entirely yet is single target. There's no skills shown that the Druid uses that seem like they're like massive single target nukes yet. We just don't really know, so we'll have to wait and see. Maybe there's some interactions between a couple skills that turn into good single target damage, but for now, that's something I'm a little unsure about. My current thought is just using concentrated area with like walking calamity and just like having that kind of shotgun a boss and do a bunch of damage. We'll see. But starting off, I'm going with a Rampage-based Shaman build. Now, if you don't know, Rampage is a skill that basically you have to use in bear form, and you sprint around slamming the ground below you, and it consumes rage to continue rampaging. And so I'm assuming, since there's no restriction listed here, that if you can find a way to generate enough rage, that you can keep doing this pretty much indefinitely, which might allow you to have some pretty good map clearing, since this skill also seems to move you at about a sprinting pace. So basically you're sprinting around dealing damage, and the radius of the damage is kind of low, and that's why we're going to be adding on a bunch of other stuff that can add like extra clear to our build, such as like Herald of Ice and Infernal Cry are good options here for extra AoE. And so the whole theory here is the frozen Rampage Shaman is the idea. So we're using Rampage with Herald of Ice, and we're getting sources of damage extra cold to help us, deal enough cold damage to freeze. And then Infernal Cry is also adding extra fire damage to our attacks, as well as giving us that combust damage, which is again more AoE. And I'm assuming if you have enough damage extra cold, the damage from that can also cause enemies to get frozen and then kind of chain the Herald of Ice even further. Also, Ancestral Cry is an option to throw in there. If you have enough glory to use this, you probably won't get 100% uptime on this, but you'll be able to use it every once in a while. And since you can generate endurance charges pretty naturally on the bear form, you'll be able to buff it up to get like a full 24-second, and then maybe if you support it with like increased duration, you get like a 30-second duration on this, which is a pretty powerful damage and clear speed increasing buff. And these war cries are cool because this ferocious roar skill that they added allows you, I think, to cast multiple war cries. Maybe it's limited to one, but it's on a meta skill. And so I'm thinking it's more than one war cry at a time. And so you can have multiple war cries kind of linked to this and cast them all at the same time. And then there's a new support they're adding that will allow you to repeat those war cries without having to do anything. So while you're charging around in your rampage, they'll just automatically be going off and refreshing those effects. Now, the way that we can probably sustain the rage to keep that rampage going is through various things, such as like the rage support, the boar talisman, which gives you rage on hit, the raging cry, which is another war cry, which will give you rage when you have enemies nearby, and all these things, plus the new ascendancy. And I will go ahead and just show these ascendancy points for you guys so you can like see what I'm talking about. So the new ascendancy points for the druid here on the shaman is right here. So you have no inherent loss of rage, which means your rage does not decay, and you regenerate 6% of your rage per second, and you can scale that with mana regeneration. That mana regeneration also applies to rage regeneration. So if you get enough mana regen, you can start to generate just a bunch of rage naturally on it, passively, right? And then this also causes your non-default attacks to cost 5 rage, but like I said, I think Rampage counts as one attack, so once you cast it, as long as you keep rampaging, you're only ever going to use up that first 5 rage. And then while you're rampaging around, of course, you're going to be consuming rage because it costs rage to use. But as long as your rage generation is higher than your consumption, you'll be able to keep going and rampage forever. And then also this gives you a bit of max rage, which again, rage is more attack damage, so just straight up more damage for us. And ideally, with the travel points here, plus some stuff on the skill tree, you'll get to like 60 max rage, which then ends up being like 60% more attack damage. And you can also combine that with stuff like Berserk if you can find a way to use this. This will have you degen some of your life, which you can solve with stuff like life regen or life on kill. And then this will increase your rage effect by quite a bit. And I think here with about 60 max rage and a 70% increased rage effect from Berserk, you'll be gaining a total of 100% more attack damage, which is basically doubling your damage. That's quite a lot to get here. Um, and this ascendancy seems like it was designed with rage in mind, since I don't think there's really any other ascendancies that have as easy of a time generating and maintaining it. Now, let's go on to how do we trigger the Herald of Ice? Well, we could do that by getting sources of extra cold. This is kind of how I was able to turn Flicker Strike into a Herald of Ice ability in my previous build. And you can combine stuff like Heart of the Well, which you can get 15% damage extra cold on it, like here for an example, as well as using the essence on your weapon, which this is of course going to be a talisman, not a maul, but there's no talismans here in Mobalytics yet. So on your talisman, which is a two-handed weapon, you'll be able to get up to 33% damage extra cold as well. So just these two together can add up to like nearly 50%. And then there's other sources, obviously, but that probably on its own will be pretty much enough, having 50% damage extra cold, to be able to start to freeze enemies and trigger your Herald of Ice, which is just going to increase your clear speed and more AoE, pops as you're rampaging around and killing enemies. Now, one thing you can use to help with this is the embitter support. So if you have other sources of damage as extra, you can put this on your skill to basically turn that into cold damage. And this might also be usable inside of Infernal Cry, because Infernal Cry gives you damage as extra fire, and then you can convert that instead into cold damage. So that Infernal Cry will be giving you cold, plus, those the sources we already mentioned, which will basically make you get close to 100% damage extra cold. Basically, all your damage that you normally would do, you're getting that all extra as cold, which should be plenty, hopefully, to freeze. And if you're struggling to freeze, you can always add in like freeze supports and stuff that increases your freeze buildup, or take some passive skills on the passive tree. Now, assuming that this all works and we can endlessly rampage around, triggering our Herald of Ice and our Infernal Cry to pop big packs of enemies, with the occasional option of throwing in that Ancestral Cry once we have enough glory for even more clear. Now, what is this ability, or what is this build really excelling at here? It's basically a map clearing monster, right? You move fast, you're running at a sprint speed, which is faster than even the Roa can go, right? And you're just blowing up everything around you. Now, that is great offensively and all, but how do we solve defenses and get some more bonuses here to take advantage of this ascendancy? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the Scold's Bridle. You might not understand this, why this is good, but basically when you spend mana, you take damage equal to a portion of that mana cost, and that damage that you take, that you're dealing to yourself, is physical damage. So you're hitting yourself for physical damage as you're spending mana. And the reason why this is so good is because this ascendancy here, similar to how one of the old passive skill points called Catalysis would work, is that 5% of the physical damage you deal will now be split into cold, fire, and lightning. What this means is that you'll be constantly hitting yourself with the Scold's Bridle for a bit of fire, a bit of cold, and a bit of lightning damage. And there are multiple ways to take advantage of this and abuse this. The first way, obviously, is just this ascendancy itself. When you take elemental damage, you gain a stack of adaptation. And if you take both of these ascendancy nodes, you get 8% elemental damage reduction per adaptation of the corresponding type of damage that you've taken. So as you're using Scold's Bridle, you'll be gaining these stacks. I'm assuming this adaptation stacks to more than just one. I'm hoping it's more than just one per element. I'm guessing it'll probably be somewhere around maybe 3 per element, because I think the whole thematic of this mechanic is that as you take damage of an element, you become more and more defensive against it, taking less and less with each corresponding hit, right? So I think you're supposed to be building this up, and so maybe it builds up to like 3 stacks, for example, in which case, with 3 stacks of adaptation for all 3 elements, that's a total of 24% just elemental damage reduction, which is a really nice defensive boost here. So this looks like something that'll be pretty strong when paired with the Scold's Bridle, being able to kind of maintain it permanently without having to take those elemental damages from your enemies, but just doing it to yourself. Now, there's other ways to abuse this, and that is to use some of these charms here. So these charms will trigger when, for example, you take a fire damage from a hit. This one will activate, giving you your maximum rage, which again will help sustain our rage as we're, rampaging around. The Velako's Roar is when you take a lightning damage from a hit, you'll gain a frenzy charge, which we can then make use of later. And the same thing with Breath of Mountain, which will then give us a power charge. So we'll be able to generate max rage, and then we'll also be giving ourselves frenzy and power charges. Now, keep in mind, the bear form is supposed to be able to generate endurance charges on its own. So with all this combined, we're basically going to have all 3 charge types. And this plays into stuff like charge regulation, which is a nice 30 spirit reservation aura that'll give us more skill speed, it'll give us more crit chance, and it'll give us more defense. So that is very nice. We can take advantage of that. But beyond that, we can start to use some support gems in our main skill. So Rampage is a skill which I'm assuming kind of snapshots the bonuses it's gaining when you first cast it, and then it gains those bonuses throughout the entire Rampage, which in this case will hopefully be infinite. So we can use stuff like Ferocity here to consume a Frenzy charge to gain 40% more skill speed for the entire duration, and stuff like Potential, which will consume one of those power charges for 40% more crit chance. And the Talisman weapon, which is the new weapon for the Druid, it has about we've seen examples of 9% base crit, which is pretty on par with like what a quarterstaff has. And obviously you probably can get a crit roll as well. And then the section of the tree here, for the Druid actually has quite a lot of crit based nodes. Like you have nodes as you path through here, you have nodes down here, up here, over here. So the idea is you could probably build a character to be pretty close to 100% crit chance here on the Druid, if that's the route you want to go. Especially with Potential here and charge regulation giving you even more crit and kind of multiplying it. I already mentioned Berserk, but the one way that you're going to hopefully be able to sustain the kind of degen damage this will be doing to you is with Leech. And you can get instant Leech through Heart of the Well, as well as we could make use of some like life on kill and stuff on gear, or some like life regen or whatever. But the idea is mainly to just like use Leech. Rampage does do physical damage, so that physical damage will allow us to have either mana or life leech or both on our gear, and then benefit from that instant leech that the Heart of the Well is enabling. So we'll be able to instantly leech back our mana and our life, and that should be enough to help sustain our mana costs and this degen here from Berserk. Now moving on, this is something that will every build from last patch that's an attack-based build is going to have to deal with. They've removed Walker of the Wilds, and they've nerfed Constricting Command, and these are the main 2 ways that people were solving mana last patch. Because if you scale your attacks too high, then the mana costs become kind of unsustainable, so you need a way to either leech it back or just have it cost nothing to begin with. But these are gone, so we'll have to find new ways to solve mana. And in my case here, Leech is one of the good ways to do that with a skill that does physical damage. But another good way to do that is to just build for mana and mana regeneration. And this kind of double dips here, because like I said, this mana regeneration will be converted into, or will also apply to rage regeneration rate here on this Ascendancy. So by scaling our mana regen, we're also be able to regenerate our rage faster. Now, why go mana over like Energy Shield, for example? Well, they are nerfing Ghost Dance quite significantly here, as well as there's apparently going to be Energy Shield nerfs kind of like across the entire skills tree. So Energy Shield overall is going to be a bit weaker than it was before. But beyond that, the Scold's Bridle does do damage to yourself, which will interrupt your Energy Shield recharge. So using Energy Shield with this has its downsides if Ghost Dance is nerfed to the point where it's not able to kind of maintain your Energy Shield recovery. So I think this all kind of adds up to the angle of going for mana as your like one of your main defenses. So Mind Over Matter with a high mana pool and a bunch of mana regeneration tied in with like the instant mana leech that we're going to be getting should be good recovery and a decent hit pool for us. And that's kind of how we're solving those defenses. And then you have the option of going like hybrid evasion armor or just pure armor, and using that to like get extra elemental damage reduction from those mods as well, if you want to stack that on top of what we already have here with this Avatar of Evolution. So elemental damage will be pretty weak against us once we have all this elemental damage reduction up, and if we have armor applies to elemental damage as well on our gear. And then for physical damage, portion of that is already going to be taken here as elemental damage. But armor in itself will also be reducing that. So physical damage shouldn't be too much of a problem. I think the thing that'll be the most dangerous will be like really big physical damage hits or stuff that kind of will bypass our mana and kill us through our life. So yeah, those are the more dangerous stuff like bleed. Actually, I think Mind Over Matter might actually make your bleed apply to mana. I'm not sure on that. But yeah, anyway, moving on. Yeah, and then this is kind of like the last section here where I talk about, like, I don't know how we're going to solve single target. The idea is concentrated effect with Walking Calamity, but we don't really know what that's going to look like. It might even be just using a combination of the Wolf or the Wyvern skills and moving away from the Bear for single target, because the Bear seems to be thematically more centered around like AoE, kind of like trampling around, killing a lot of enemies, and less so on single target. Whereas the Wolf, it has like attack speed, it has those Wolf companions which all do single target damage, so it seems like it's more focused on that. So maybe you'll have like a dual transformation build where you switch between Bear and Wolf for AoE and single target. But yeah, anyway, that's just the quick Theorycraft here on some interactions here that you can use to make a pretty strong build. What might end up happening is that you don't really need Herald of Ice for the clear, and instead you throw in stuff like Herald of Ash, and that'll be good enough. And that's maybe an option, but Herald of Ice has historically been one of the best AoE clearing skills for abilities that don't have like inherent good AoE on their own, which the Rampage skill doesn't really have. At least from the footage, it seems like it just kind of hits enemies underneath your feet. So we need something that will expand that range, and that's where the Infernal Cry plus the Herald of Ice really comes in handy there. And yeah, that's the build. I hope you guys enjoy this Theorycraft. It's not proven or anything, so I don't think you should like put your bet on this build being like good or anything like that. But maybe it gives you some ideas, and maybe you guys can share some ideas about other interactions that might help a build kind of like this in the chat, and we can work together to figure out how to make Druid really powerful class in the upcoming patch. But yeah, anyway guys, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.